Welcome to the first podcast shot entirely in VR.
This is Elevated Studios.
Our guest today is the developer of the Topgolf app within Oculus. And before he created the Topgolf app in Oculus, he has a company called Golf Scope that actually it lays over a green and shows you how to putt. He has actually a very long tech background, but we might as well bring him on up and kind of walk through all that with him. So if you guys want to welcome Ryan Engle to the stage.
Let's go.
Should be good.
There he is. Come on up, man.
What's up, Ryan?
Sit down.
There we go. Yeah, Ryan.
Welcome, glad to have you.
So the other day,
Yeah, good to be here.
we noticed you had
nice.
you had an ace on your full course beta. Oh, it dropped.
Man.
Should
Party
be able to
foul.
grab it. There we go. But
Got some experience with that from
we'll
college.
put those on your tab. There we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
That's right. Drinks are on me. Thank you for the
But yeah, so just to start off, we'll just kind of go through your background a little bit. I saw, just based off your LinkedIn, went to Virginia Tech, studying some tech. And from there, you've kind of had a very just entrepreneur-based life since then. It looked like you maybe had a career here or there, but always been trying to start your own thing and get your feet on the ground and get lifted off. And now you're here. So,
Yeah.
so you want to give us
I
a little
think
bit
that
of a
pretty much-
background on everything?
Sure, pretty much sums it up. So yeah, I went to Virginia Tech. Before that, I started playing golf when I was 11. I was living in South Africa with my parents, and I was bored one Sunday. My dad was going to play, and I bugged him until he let me come with him. He said, "You can come play with me, but if I tell you to pick up the ball and keep moving, then that's what we're gonna do." And I never had to pick up the ball because I kept the pace going. I think my best score is probably like a 10 on the on whatever hole. But at that point, I was addicted. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I get to hang out with my dad and his friends, and they treat me like an adult, and we're out in nature, and the weather's perfect, and I get to like swing and hit this golf ball, as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And then computers were also, like, I'd say, kind of a huge thing for me. Living in South Africa, I was like 45 minutes from my closest friends. So I couldn't just walk over to my friend's house. Like, everything required a ton of coordination. And so when I was at home, it was like video games and computers were pretty much it. And, got into that, got into programming. My high school had computer science classes. So about age 13, I started writing code, kept playing golf, went to Virginia Tech, got my computer science degree. And then my last year at Virginia Tech, there was a graduate program or a graduate class that was on virtual environments. And this was like 2007. So they had, this like multi-million-dollar kind of VR equipment. They had these headsets that were like, pre-DK1 that weighed like 30 pounds and had this whole system to like strap it to the ceiling so that you could get in there. I think it was still just 3DOF. And then they had something called a cave, which was this like, it's this room that's like 10 by 10 by 10, and they project onto every single wall. So you're inside the room and it's being projected on, and you wear these glasses that let you see something different out of each eye. So the cool thing about it is you can actually see your hands, because these glasses are like sunglasses, like you can see through them. So you can see your hands, you can see your feet, you can see your body, but you also see VR on all the walls in front of you, and you can move around and interact. And it's like very similar to kind of, room scale VR today. So I took that class, was like, this is amazing. but head-mounted displays are terrible. I mean, they're ridiculously expensive, and the resolution was terrible and just not practical. And this cave setup is awesome, but obviously people are going to have caves in their house. That's also like $100,000 plus stuff. So it's kind of like, okay, VR's cool, but it's going to be a while before it's consumer ready. And then, lucky enough, my parents moved to Austin, Texas when I was in college. And I really liked it when I would come to visit. So I moved to Austin, ended up getting a job at a mobile game development company. And this was before the iPhone even came, like the iPhone had an app store. This was like 2008.
Wow.
So the iPhone didn't even have an app store yet. Later that year, they launched an app store. And lucky for me, the studio decided to kind of pivot to go all in on iPhone games. Before that, we were making games for flip phones, right? Like there were actually games for flip phones. I worked on Big Buck Hunter Pro, the Big Buck Hunter like arcade game for a flip phone, if you can believe it.
What?
It was ridiculous. But then, we went in on iPhone, built Big Buck Hunter for iPhone, built a snowboarding game. Unfortunately, that studio had some issues management-wise. This was like 2009, so there was also the sort of economic crash, and I got let go of that job before I even hit my first year there, and then was like, all right, well, I'm like 22 or 23. I've got as much experience building iPhone apps as anybody in the world because the App Store just came out 6 months prior. So I'm just going to build iPhone apps and see if I can find, people that need iPhone apps to be built and try to start that business. Turns out the building app stuff I was pretty good at, but the finding people to build apps for part, the marketing essentially and sales, I was like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to find people that need apps to be built. But I was able to find a sort of an app development company in Austin called Mutual Mobile that was run by like these 5 founders that were like 21, 22. They were like a year younger than me. So, these really young people, I was still super young. And they had this company where people were coming to them to get apps developed. So I went to interview with them. And the first day I meet one of the founders and he and I just like totally hit it off. And they hire me on the spot. And then, for the next few years, I was just like heads down, building apps, spending, nights and weekends, like easily 70 hours a week, kind of on average, just like going as hard as I could into this stuff. And the company grew from like 10 people when I joined to about 300 people over the next few years. I ended up leaving, going to start a different app development company to work on this app called glasses.com where you could use AR to try on virtual glasses. It was founded by the founder of 1-800-Contacts. And the app went really well. We launched it at TED in 2013. It got featured by Apple. I built my sort of app studio to like 12 people. And then the founder of 1-800-Contacts told me he was starting this other company called WikiBuy with the goal of helping people save money when they shop online. So he asked me if I wanted to be the founding engineer of that company. And he had started 1-800-Contacts from his dorm in 1995. It later sold for over $1 billion. So I figured the opportunity to work with him, face to face, it's like you can't pass that up.
We gotta Kev, hit the clap on that.
So even though, WikiBuy was kind of this e-commerce web company, which frankly wasn't the most interesting thing to me, I was super into AR. The Glasses project really opened my eyes to the potential of AR. And, I think the DK1 came out that same year and I tried it and was like, oh man, okay, HMDs have a future, but DK1 is still pretty rough around the edges. I feel like the AR VR tech is still 3 to 5 years out before it's really consumer ready. And again, this was like 2013 or so. So I was like, so I'm going to go do WikiBuy, get a bunch of experience actually, building a startup from scratch from this founder that's, sold his company for $1 billion. and it's well funded and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And then, you know, hopefully by the time I go through this experience, the AR VR market will be a little bit better. So fast forward, went through the experience, you know, put in kind of 4 years there. That company, WikiBuy, eventually got bought by Capital One. So it worked out really well for everybody involved. And I left right before the acquisition to go found GolfScope with the purpose of using AR to help people putt better by showing them the contours of the green and the break from the ball to the hole. So I did that, and it worked, and it got featured by Apple, and it was you know, really cool tech. Some folks are still using it. We actually took it down from the store about a year ago because AR is just a very hard business to run unless you're doing like face filters or you can get a lot of funding, I guess. But it's just hard to get people to use it kind of in a utility way. So when the Quest came out, I was like, oh man, this seems like the VR device that could really take off. I mean, the price point's good, the hardware's good. Like, this is pretty incredible. So we took the tech from the AR app, ported it over into Unity to get a version working in VR, which, you know, then became ProPutt. And the rest is kind of history. We ended up pivoting and focusing entirely on VR, and that's where we plan to focus going forward.
Excellent, man.
Yeah.
Excellent.
but yeah, so very, very extensive background there. It sounds like you kind of hit that first wave at the perfect time, and now once again you're repositioning yourself for this VR wave. So it sounds like you are going to be okay in the next 5 to 10 years. But so the past month or so, I came across the Topgolf app. Also on your Twitter, you have a great Twitter, by the way, for with tips and advice on other developers. But just playing around in the Topgolf app, everything's awesome. How did that partnership come to be, though? Like, are you truly associated and branded with the Topgolf we use in real life?
Yeah, we are. Same Topgolf company. We do maintain kind of complete creative control over the entire experience, but we obviously get their feedback and approval for anything that involves their brand and you know, their side of the experience. So the partnership with them has been great. You know, we launched the app about a year ago, which was like right when, you know, the pandemic kind of hit or within that area. And obviously Topgolf is, you know, kind of a restaurant, bar, social gathering space. So when COVID hit, that's a pretty big deal. They had to close all their locations, and you know, they've really rebounded in an incredible way. It was obviously a very difficult time for them because it's like no one really knew what was going to happen with lockdown and when they'd be able to reopen and when people could come back and when it would be safe and all of that stuff. So we've been just really impressed with how, you know, how well they've interacted with us, given we're kind of this tiny company compared to this, you know, multi-billion-dollar brand. But they've been super supportive, super encouraging. They've made a ton of connections between us and other people in the golf space. And it all started by kind of pure happenstance. When I started Golf Scope, we're in Austin. They're based in Dallas, so not too far away. And I happened to have a friend that had a friend that worked at Topgolf. So that friend introduced me. I told him what we were doing at Golf Scope, you know, with the AR tech. Obviously wasn't a great fit for Topgolf at the time, but the person over there introduced me to one of their sort of heads of partnership. And, you know, we had a good conversation. He said, hey, if you're ever doing anything that you think aligns with what we're doing at Topgolf, just reach out. And, you know, we'd love to stay in contact. What you're doing seems cool. And, you know, I shared that, you know, I go to Topgolf all the time just as a customer. Like, it's awesome. So it was just this very casual intro. And then when we decided to do the Quest thing, Topgolf owns a mobile game company called WGT Golf, and or it's actually called WGT, which is World Golf Tour. And when we did the Quest thing, we reached out and was like, hey, are you guys interested in VR at all? We've got, you know, our tech running in VR and it's really cool. And they said, you know, we are not doing anything in VR because mobile is such a big market for us. But we know some people at Oculus, and they've kind of been bugging us to do something. So if you have something, we'd love to see it. So we go to see it. It's by pure coincidence. Oculus has an office in Dallas because of John Carmack, who used to be their CTO. And the office they have in Dallas is literally the floor under Topgolf's headquarters in the same building. So pure coincidence, and that's why
awesome.
Topgolf and Oculus, had a lot of conversations. And we showed them what we were doing, and Topgolf's like, look, we're probably not going to do anything in VR directly anytime soon because the market's just not big enough yet. But we'd love to see where you take this. So again, by coincidence, we end up continuing with the tech, and then Topgolf, and then Oculus Connect 6 was coming up like a month and a half after our initial conversation with Topgolf. Someone at Topgolf kind of took an interest in what we were doing, and they said, hey, we're going to set up a meeting for you at OC6 with some fairly senior people from Facebook/Oculus. And we'd love for you to share, whatever you have with them and see if there's any interest. So we get this meeting set up. The title of the meeting is like Topgolf and Oculus, has nothing to do with Golf Scope. Nothing. It's not clear at all that we're not even associated with Topgolf. And we go to this meeting, and basically, the table gets handed over to me to kind of tell Oculus what we're planning on doing. Just so happens that both of the guys in the meeting were golfers, loved golf. We had this pretty awesome demo where you could hold a real putter and hit putts in VR, and ended up kind of giving them the presentation on why we think golf is such a good fit for VR, why we think we're the people that can do it. Again, there's kind of this unspoken assumption that this was all sort of under Topgolf's brand, and the Facebook Oculus people just like went crazy for it, spent a ton of time in the demo. We're having a blast, and we ended up sort of securing a spot in the Quest store, which is not easy to do. At the time, I had no idea how hard it was, but we kind of got in because of the demo and because of Topgolf. And then after we got in, we basically went back to Topgolf and was like, hey guys, like, we're already in the store, we might as well partner together now and take advantage. And Topgolf was on board, and we struck a deal.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. So circling back to the creative side of things and coding and things like that. I know in our audience, we have a lot of creators here in Horizon, and even on our Twitter platform, we have some creators following us. So what are some of the creation and coding aspects that you used in Topgolf? And could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been writing code, for 23 years now or something like that. And had classes, but mostly self-taught. So for me, when we started this project, I didn't really have any experience with Unity, but it was pretty clear that Unity was what the majority of people were building in. So I figured it would make sense to learn Unity and start there. And, thankfully, it's just these days, there's just so much information out there, from tutorials,
Yes.
YouTube videos, walkthroughs, advice on Twitter, everything like that. So, for the first, I'd say, month or two, my goal was not even to think about kind of what the final version of the product was going to look like, but to basically just experiment as much as possible in Unity and take kind of my dev skills from mobile and from web. I had done quite a bit of sort of OpenGL stuff as well, and just try to understand how that would work in Unity. So it was very sort of, greenfield, just pursue whatever seemed really interesting, and, try to understand kind of where some of the boundaries are within VR, but also, what kind of interactions feel really good. And a lot of it was basically just building something that seemed like a really good idea on paper, trying it in VR, and realizing that, like, oh, it turns out this thing doesn't work. Like, HUDs in VR are kind of terrible, even though on paper, and every first person shooter game has a HUD on a flat screen, doesn't work in VR. That was one of the first things that we tried. All right, mark that down. This doesn't work. Let's avoid it. Whereas anything, sort of spatial, like the names over your heads that are completely matched to your 3D position, and the fact that no matter how far away the names are, I can read them pretty clearly because they all scale to be about the same. Like the actual font size is kind of the same no matter how far away you are. That makes a lot of sense. Making sure that things are very legible and the right size versus being way too big or way too small in the distance. Stuff like that makes sense. But a lot of it for me really just came down to kind of trial and error. And even today, half the things that I try in VR work and half of them don't work. And frankly, that's kind of the ratio that I personally like to see, because that way it forces you to continue to push yourself. If everything that you try works well in VR, then you're not really taking any chances. So I think a lot of it just comes down to like really pushing yourself. Just because you haven't seen somebody else do it doesn't mean that it's not possible. And especially now in VR with the ecosystem being so small, now is such a good time to just kind of like try whatever you think is going to work, because like the rules haven't been written yet.
Man, so just going back to like you 08, it was the iPhone. That ecosystem had to be so small, and now you're in the same boat in VR. Like if you keep pushing the boundaries now, like the flood of developers is just gonna probably grow exponentially in this space as well. So where they are all gonna have to go through those first steps that you've already been knocking out for the past year or two already. So well, sounds like you were in a mixed reality room 15 years ago. So like I don't know. It's wild how long you've been in this space already. But just going into the Topgolf app itself, like you have the Pro Putt course with a lot of different areas to play in. You have the driving range, just like a real Topgolf in the real world. And I really do love the whole YouTube integration with music, and just it just makes it a lot more lively and feels real. Like it's awesome. You guys have killed that. And even like Kevin and I were in there last week, and he would put up music and he could share it with me to where we're watching the same videos. It's like we're there in person playing. And even you had the little chipping game and the bags, and you guys have really killed it in there. So I just wanted to say congrats on that.
Thank you.
As far as no problem. As far as like developing the app, what has been the most I don't know, what's taken the most time, or what's been the most difficult for you to nail down?
Yeah, I wrote a thread about this on Twitter recently, and just kind of posted a couple of our findings, the things that took a lot of time at first, and now I feel like we have kind of a better process around. Um, but I'd say there are a few major differences between like sort of where things are with VR right now and where things were with mobile, even like back in late 2008. And if you look at mobile in late 2008, it was almost, in some ways, it was almost the opposite of what's happening with VR right now, because when you take kind of a desktop application, and the screen's this big, right? And then you condense it down to a screen that's the size of your hand, the ability to do things is greatly reduced, right? You can't have these really complicated big UIs because they don't fit on the screen. So it kind of forces everything to be simplified and, kind of turned into like a one function experience at first, which means it's possible for a single developer to write one of the most popular apps on the store because they create something really cool that's really simple and it sells for like $1. Whereas in VR, there's no dollar apps out there for a good reason. Everything takes way more time to do. It's full 3D. You can look in any possible direction, and you have to build an experience that kind of gracefully handles the possibilities out there, and the fact that users are going to try to do whatever they can because it's this kind of cool open playground. So VR is by far the hardest development experience I've ever had, mostly because you're developing on this 2D screen in the editor, and you write code and you try to see how it's going to work, and then you put your headset on and you get in there and it's just different. It's completely different, right? The things that look good on flat may not look good. The interactions, like the ability to pick something up, hit a rock with it and then get feedback from that, the sound effects, just the visuals, the particle effects, like all of that stuff is just stuff on 2D where like you can kind of get away with doing very little. So I think the biggest takeaway for us from day one was like testing it in VR on the headset is just critical. Like don't assume it's going to work just because it looks good in the editor. Get it in the headset, get it working. When we started in VR, there was no Oculus Link. So in order to test it on the headset, you actually had to kick off a build, which, could take 5 to 10 minutes, get it on the headset, try it out, go back to the drawing board and make whatever tweaks. Oculus Link was by far, easily like a 10x time saver for us, because now you can make changes in the editor while you've got your headset on and like within seconds kind of test out these little tweaks to, interactions and stuff like that you can only really do in VR. That being said, one of the first things that we did, and something that we still do, is invest I'd say 80% of the time, our development time is probably on tooling, stuff that as a user you're never even going to see. So we've got tooling to help us create the courses. We've got tooling to help us simulate all the different shot patterns that you could possibly see, so that we make sure that when we create a course, golf balls aren't all getting stuck in a certain spot, or if you are in a certain spot, it's not impossible to get out of that spot. So we've got tools where you can kind of put the ball anywhere on the course, set a velocity, and within a second hit 100 shots simultaneously and kind of see the pass of where all those golf balls end up.
Wow.
We've got, tools that kind of help us put different colors on the courses so that we can see which spots have too much slope, which spots are too flat. We've got tools for multiplayer where we can kind of simulate another player playing with us, so that we know, what happens when it's the next person's turn, what happens if they hit one out of bounds, what happens in these sort of edge case scenarios. Let's make sure that we have tools to simulate every possible scenario, so that we're not spending a bunch of time in the headset trying to recreate a very odd thing. We can capture it and replay it and then fix it in the editor to kind of save that time. And then, and then a lot of it comes for us. It was beta testing was probably the most important thing that we did during development. From the very beginning of the app, a year and a half ago, we posted on Reddit, showed some screenshots of kind of where it's at, and started collecting emails from people that were interested in testing it and being beta test people. And I think, one of the things that I think we did well, even though we hadn't done beta testing before, was batching your betas. So kind of, when we went into it, I was under the assumption that maybe we'd have 2 or 3 iterations of the beta, and then it would be good enough, and then, we'd launch it. Of course, I'm under the assumption that the first beta is already awesome. But as soon as you get real new players in there, they're all like, I don't understand how this works. This doesn't make sense, da-da-da-da-da. And we ended up going through 7 different rounds of betas,
Wow.
7 beta releases. And every time we would do a new beta release, we would add new people. So we'd always add everybody that was on the last beta to get their feedback, and then add at least 50 new people, so that we'd have a fresh perspective with each beta to make sure that we kind of fix some of the issues that were initially really confusing, but over time you learn to understand. So for anybody creating stuff out there, just make sure every time you have a new version of it, you always have new people coming in and giving you brand new feedback, because that first time experience is going to leave the biggest impression. And if people get stuck in the first time experience, there's a good chance they're never going to have a second or third time experience, which is where, things may start to really feel polished. So that was a big part of it. And then I'd say Discord was kind of the last big piece that made a huge difference, where we started Discord from the very beginning to get that kind of real-time feedback from people.
Nice. Yeah. So we have a ton of audience members in here today that pretty much all the names I saw before we came up on stage, they're world creators. Yoda was our first guest. He actually built a world that Facebook essentially hired him to be a general contractor for. He has tons of experience. I know John up there. He just had a world featured in the Facebook Horizon Plaza. So we got some impressive people out there. That's great feedback, though. I mean, beta testing, inviting friends, but like you said, having new people for each batch. And one thing in Horizon that I think crosses over to the Topgolf app as well. There's a user in here who has the most visited world. His name's Sandwich, and he basically created his own physics within Horizon. So I was curious how the physics in Topgolf work. Like, how do you gauge how far a putt goes, or how far the driver versus the wedge versus the iron goes? Like, I don't know. I feel like that'd be pretty complicated.
Yeah, it is. We wrote all of the physics in the game. 100% of the golf ball physics are completely, self-built. So it's not using any of, the Unity's physics system, because it just didn't quite line up right for us. The good news is golf is a very well-studied activity. And there are a lot of very technical papers out there to explain how a golf ball works, right? Because golf balls kind of have the dimples on them, right? And that can have a big impact on kind of how the ball flies through the air, and whether it curves, and how much spin it has, and whether it goes up or down or left or right. And thankfully that's all kind of documented stuff. So basically step one was reading through all of these papers to try to understand like what's actually happening to a golf ball at any given point. And then taking the equations from these papers and translating them over to write in Unity, so that every single frame we're calculating what should happen to the golf ball, how much spin is on the golf ball, what the effects are. And it's something that, I mean, literally right before this call, I'm making continuous tweaks to the physics to kind of account for different scenarios that are not necessarily documented, or things that just have a lot of variance to them. Like if you're on a golf course where it rained the night before, everything's pretty soft. The ground is soft, right? So if you take a golf ball and you throw it into the ground as hard as you can when it's soft, it's going to kind of bounce a little bit and stop. If it's been really dry for a while, you throw it into the ground, that thing might be almost like concrete, and it's just going to bounce and just roll out. So there's a ton of kind of handling those situations, and then even having control over what's the dryness of my course, what happens when the ball hits fairway or rough, or all these things. So again, that's kind of where tooling comes in. And in order to get the putts working, step one was just like, okay, we're just going to do a 1-to-1 translation. So if a putter was actually moving as fast as it is in VR, and all the units, are kind of real world units. So if a putter's moving at 20 miles an hour and you hit a golf ball, what should happen in real life? And we kind of started by taking these sort of known values and just making sure that our equations would lead to the same result there. And then we realized that, one of the big issues with VR is you're not actually holding a golf club. So getting your controller to go at 20 miles an hour, where I could just do it with a flick of the wrist, is totally different than doing it with a golf club, where you actually have to create real force to get the club to move.
Yeah.
So that's why in all of our games we have the power bar, because different players have different preferences. Some of them like it to be just a complete 1-to-1 match based on the speed of their own movement. Some of them realize that because there's no weight, they kind of tend to go a lot faster. Therefore, they want to reduce the power. So we have, controls that are obviously not possible in real life, that just make a lot of sense in VR. And then frankly, it all just comes down to, again, beta testing. Since I've been playing golf for quite a while, I have a feel for what I think is right. My co-founder's been playing even longer than me. He's been playing since he was like 4. So he's got a feel for what he thinks is right. And, what we found is that if we can kind of match his feel and match my feel, most people tend to be pretty happy. But then we've got to test it with people that don't play golf whatsoever, because they're not going to have that same feel of what it's like to actually golf. and we want to make sure that we have an experience that's really easy for people that don't play golf to get into as well. So at the end of the day, we have kind of had to tweak a lot of the physics just to make it feel better, or be a little easier in some situations, because you're still playing a game. Like, we want it to be fun. We don't want to make it super realistic and then make it basically impossible for anybody to play.
Just quick question: how many developers do you guys have, like, working on the app at once? Wow. Not bad. Another, like, one of my favorite parts just ties to your Golf Scope app itself. Like, when you just are on the green about to putt, just the slope of the green and everything, like, do you think that's something that can eventually translate back into augmented reality, when there are, like, I know Snapchat spectacles are just sunglasses, kind of like you described yourself wearing back in the day, but, like, do you guys plan on kind of going back into the AR space when that technology gets more up to speed, I guess?
Yeah, I hope so. I think what I learned from kind of our mobile experience building the app is, like, a mobile device is just not that great for AR unless you're doing like face filters, because you're looking through this just tiny window, right? Once we have
Yeah.
glasses that kind of give me this field of view very similar to what VR is like, there's no reason that we can't take all this technology and translate it back over. Not only that, it should be a lot more accurate, because now, devices are going to have LiDAR sensors. They're going to be able to understand the contours a lot better than from 5 years ago on a mobile device. So 100%, when there's a mass market AR consumer device that people are using, we will definitely be bringing our tech back over. And hopefully, when you play a real round of golf, you'll still be using one of our products.
I did see in your Twitter feed also there was the Ready Player Golf charity tournament that Engage, I believe, is putting together here in the next few months. Is that gonna be? I know you have the full course beta as well. Are you guys shooting to have the beta done? Or are they doing that on the Pro Putt courses, or what do they got in store coming up for that?
Yeah, they'll be doing it on the Pro Putt courses. They did one about almost a year ago, maybe 9 months ago. The first version of it, and this was still on Quest One and everything, and they did a great job. And since that went so well, they're doing another, even bigger version. Every Friday, they have Friday friendlies where you can go join up with people and play rounds of Pro Putt.
Oh, nice,
So
nice.
this next one will be with Pro Putt, and hopefully the one after that, assuming this goes well, they can try out full course. But full course won't. We're shooting for like probably a November/holiday release for full course. Even though I
Nice.
think where it's at right now is really solid. We just sent out beta one, so I'm under the impression that we'll probably get pretty close to that 7 number again. And we just really want to leave a good first impression on people that try it. So we're gonna add as much polish as we can before we push it out.
Yeah,
Excellent.
for sure. Um, and with that whole, like, tournament feel, uh, that's just a charity tournament, but something that is just continues to grow and grow would be esports as a whole. And I was in Top Golf the other day, just playing some random people in there, and it was still fun. You just talk to them like you're meeting people in real life. But do you guys have anything in the works or a vision for any sort of esport tournament? Or, like, I know there's a VR Masters League where there's actual teams and stuff like that. I didn't know if you guys had anything like that in the pipeline.
Yeah, we do. It's actually something that we were kind of hoping to get to before we even released full course, but just based on how fast the year's been going, and the after you release something live, there's a big sort of maintenance cost, and that's been a learning curve for us to figure out exactly how much time we need to spend on just maintaining what's already out there. So unfortunately, we're kind of hoping to have tournaments already, a V1 of tournaments already live right now, but the reality is we're going to have to put it on the back burner until we get full course done, just because we don't want to risk that release. But tournaments are one of the things that internally, it's probably, other than full course, it's the thing that we're the most excited about. And I think the good news for us is golf already has tournaments. They have at least one tournament every single week. The British or the Open just finished, which is like the last major of the year. And, they've already got a very specific sort of a structure for how tournaments work and who gets into the tournament and what you win and everything like that. So our goal is to kind of build something based on how golf already works in real life, but obviously edit it a little bit to make it more convenient for VR because it is a different medium. But yeah, it's one of the things that I hope our players really like. Our most active players definitely ask about it all the time, and we want to do something that's not just tournaments, but also kind of like leagues, right? So you can kind of find the group of people that you want to play with at a similar skill level. So that way, we're not just limiting it to the best players in the world. We've got something, for everybody.
Yeah. And do you think that's something players and users can monetize over time? Like, is that something to where there's going to be like a pro league with real money on the line, or is it just kind of going to be more for fun in the beginning? Or what do you guys have? Like,
Our
what do you guys think
goal,
around that
yeah, I
aspect
mean,
of things?
I guess the way that we kind of look at it is if you take golf, for example, there's the sport of golf, and then there's like the PGA Tour, right? And the PGA Tour doesn't really control the sport of golf. Golf's been around for a lot longer than the PGA Tour. It's got its own rules. The people who make the rules are actually different than the PGA Tour. We want to set up our game so that we kind of build the sport out, and then we give tools to people to kind of create the various leagues and tournaments that they want. We'll obviously have tournaments that we officially endorse and support and promote, but we want to create kind of an environment where if you want to set up your own third party system and connect your Venmo and kind of have high stake games, you can 100% do that. I don't think that we'll be directly involved in kind of collecting money for tournaments at first, just because there's a lot of risk that comes with that. And we don't want to send the wrong message at a high level. Our mission as a company is to grow the game of golf. And, by focusing on tournaments that cost a bunch of money to get into, I don't think that's necessarily the best way to grow it. So we kind of want to start with the ground layer and make sure that we've got something everybody can use, but then give our players the tools to go, if you want a tournament that's got $1,000 buy-in and, the winner might win 10 grand, like go for it, have at it. We'll have the tech, but we're not going to be collecting any money or doing any payouts because that's a completely different type of risk.
A whole nother.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm supportive of all sides, people playing for fun for free and, people putting real money behind it because they feel like they've got what it takes. Golf involves a lot of betting in real life for a lot of people. So I think that's just kind of a natural fit for a lot of the people to play.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't put any money down. Kev would have me broke by now. He beat me like 2 or 3 times this week. But no, I was just curious what I know. Yeah, right. But yeah, I was just curious. I know that's a growing just field in gaming as a whole. So I was just curious as to what you guys thought about that. But yeah, really, that's pretty much all we got. I guess last question would just be like, what's next? That you're working on the full course beta, just planning a wide release of that. But just for the space as a whole, what's your vision for VR and for your company as well?
Yeah, well, I'll start with our company because I spent a lot more time thinking about that. Our plan is to stay focused on golf and primarily VR golf kind of for the foreseeable future. I think one of the biggest issues with golf as a whole is just convenience and accessibility. It costs a lot of money to buy clubs and takes a lot of time to go play golf. And initially when you start golf, very few people are any good at it. So there's just all this friction to kind of get to the point where golf is fun. Thankfully my co-founder and I have been playing since we were kids. So we're already at the point where we're addicted. And I think if we can kind of lower the barrier, we'll get more people to that point and have them hitting good shots and kind of hopefully they'll take that, experience and then go play the real game. We want people to go outside, play golf. It's a great sport. I think it teaches you a lot of good life lessons about patience and respect and etiquette and things like that. So, we're going to stay focused on VR golf. I believe that in the next 10 to 20 years, we'll see more rounds of VR golf than real golf. There are about 25 million people in the United States that play real golf and 100 million people that watch golf tournaments. I think that we can beat those numbers. I think that we can create an experience that really lowers the bar and gets people in. I think Topgolf is a great partner for us because they're proving that, and they're already getting close to those numbers just by people going to Topgolf and being exposed to the sport in a completely different way. So we're huge fans of that. So our plan is to stay focused on golf, really make it a sport that people can get into, get excited about, go deeper in, and then hopefully eventually bring that knowledge to the course. For VR as a whole, I tweeted something yesterday that I just think about a lot. And it's like, I'm wearing the Quest 2. I assume you guys probably are too. And it's a great device considering where we were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but it's still, it's still not perfectly comfortable. It's this bulky thing. It's got a limited field of view. It's got a limited resolution. I'm limited in my interactions. It can't really, track my face or my mouth perfectly. So there's a ton of friction with this device, right? It is low power. And if we think about where the device is going to be in 10, 20, 50 years, and you kind of look back at where like the first iPhone was or computers were 30 years ago, and you think about, where VR is going to be when you have retina resolution, every little detail is perfect. We can render with like better quality than even like Unreal 5 or PlayStation 5, right? It's pretty amazing that VR is at the point where it is today, given the constraints of the hardware and how, this experience now is like probably close to like an N64 experience realistically, right? It's like, it's very limited. So I get really excited about the idea of VR being used for more than just games, but for utility. And, when I go to work in the morning, instead of sitting in this chair at a computer desk, maybe I'm, laying back in something way more comfortable, way better for my body, wearing this very lightweight device that's, super high resolution, probably has pass-through cameras so I can still see the real world. And I'm able to kind of do my work from literally anywhere in the world, have, infinite screen resolution, and browse the internet, watch my Netflix movies, communicate with people on my team and feel like we're kind of right next to each other, and do all these things in a much more seamless way. And then when I want to take a break, I literally go to one of the most beautiful beaches in the world or one of the best golf courses in the world, play a quick round of 9-hole golf with a buddy. And it's like, that for me, that's the ultimate human experience, is leveling the playing field, right? It's like, you shouldn't have to be one of the best golfers in the world or one of the richest people in the world to play one of the nicest, most beautiful golf courses in the world. In VR, there's no reason we can't let everybody do that, for a fraction of the cost, if not free. And basically just take these amazing world experiences and present them to us in a way that that feels natural, feels really good, and gives us kind of control over where we want to be in the world or the virtual world. And just, have a device that we're willing to wear all day and kind of push the boundaries of what's possible as a human.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Please give us a follow, subscribe, or tip on our socials at ElevatedXR. Thanks, and see you next time.